Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gigging Out, a podcast about the people and businesses leading the gig economy. I'm Dana Gagnon, CMO at Every, and this week's guest is Patrick Johnson, co-founder and CEO at Vantage Sports, a marketplace that connects college athletes with paid opportunities to coach and mentor younger athletes. The idea for Vantage was born out of Patrick's own experience as a coach, coupled with the NCAA's name, image, and likeness ruling, which allows college athletes to monetize their personal brands. Patrick shares how they approach an MVP for the first version of Vantage, where they're investing in technology, and how they're learning from the athletes on the platform. He also talks about their recruiting strategies and what it takes to educate parents on the service, and a whole lot more. Enjoy. Well, Patrick, I'm so thrilled to have you today. Thank you for joining me on Gigging Out.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Dana. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So let's dive in. Can you tell me, where did the idea for Vantage come from?
Yeah, so the idea came when I was working in New York City, living in Jersey City, and I was coaching youth lacrosse, the 5th and 6th grade level. And, one day I sort of had this idea that these youth players could really benefit from a service that connects them to college athletes to get some extra private training, to really get relatable mentors and figures that are at the top of their game that can help them in a more personalized level, build their skills and their confidence. I saw how challenging it could be to coach 25 young lacrosse players at one time. And I sort of saw the benefit of, a smaller setting and sort of that relationship building that happens when you match them for a one-on-one or a small group training. And then timing with the NCAA's name, image, and likeness happening. This was, the idea came at the end of 2019, but the articles were starting to come out about what was going to happen in NIL. I think it was California was the first state that was pushing some legislation. So it was just an idea for a little while, but I knew that there'd be an opportunity when this legislation did come to fruition.
You hear about, obviously with NIL, people sponsoring different products, being on commercials, but this is the first coaching offering that I've heard of for these athletes. So what a cool alternative for them to make some income. So you have the idea. Where do you start? How do you start vetting if this idea has traction? How do you start building the app? Can you talk through that?
Yeah. First started with going to some college athletes. I talked to a few of the parents I coached with, and I sort of knew that there was a market on the youth side from my experience coaching. I also grew up in, a suburban town in New Jersey where parents were definitely investing in services that could help their kids play college sports and just improve their athletics overall. So I felt a little bit more confident about that side of the market. I think the big question was, would college athletes want to do this, have the time to do this effectively? I did know a few college athletes who had done this sort of under the table pre-NIL. So I knew there was some market there, but it was to build a full business, it needs to be something that can happen, more year round, more consistently, and, ultimately at scale. So I talked to a number of college athletes from my network and, even just athletes I connected with on LinkedIn and sort of validated that, there was an interest. And we built up a pretty small waiting list, but, a decent little waiting list of college athletes who would want to join when we had the website out. And then from there, it was finding out how to build the technology. Yeah. And that's where the next step went. Was I going to learn how to code myself? Was I going to find a partner? Was I going to contract it out? So after looking into some no code options, I decided to ultimately find a good contractor just to build a very, very basic version of a web-based application that can facilitate some of these transactions. It took a little time to get the capital and the person in place to do that. I mean, I was still working my full-time job, so I wasn't exactly rushing. And, at this point, NIL hadn't even officially started yet. This was in 2020. So I got a little extra work from home time with the pandemic to sort of figure things out, and then was able to get a contractor to sort of scope out and start the initial building of the website.
I imagine it's evolved since then. Where have you invested on the technology side? Were things more manual in the beginning, and how is it working now?
Yeah, so it has come a long way. We have invested in really making the features that make this easier for both sides really, but it's, I think, largely built around these busy college athletes who, want to do this do have time constraints, and building out features that can help them, sort of streamline the offering, right? A description of what training they're going to do, a price, so they get to pick the location, a scheduling feature, almost like a little mini Calendly where they put the times they're free and then parents are able to book. So that's the type of stuff we've been invested in so far. I think we've seen initially that it's super valuable to sort of build it around the college athletes. They're ultimately sort of our, what makes this work. And we'll continue to make those investments. We're still leveraging a web application today, and we, definitely have had the conversations with college athletes who are using it pretty heavily, and just getting an understanding of what comes next in terms of features, messaging system, mobile app. But overall, feel like we've started to build something that's very valuable for them, and we'll continue to do that.
Are all of the lessons that they're providing, are they happening in person? Do they do anything virtually as well? Can you talk through how the actual lesson transpires?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, 99% of the lessons are in person. We've definitely seen that there's a higher demand for that, and it was just a simpler connection to make right off the bat. So I think for the time being, we'll sort of stick with that model. I think the greater plan is to build in some virtual offerings in terms of virtual training, film reviews, and really just other ways college athletes can help youth and high school athletes. And, in the high school level, there's a lot of need for sort of mentorship and advice around the college recruiting process. So that's something we're working on. We've piloted it really and seen that it's valuable. We're working on rolling that out at a greater scale this year, which those conversations can happen over Zoom. So that's something we can do virtually. But yeah, so it is, right now it's very localized, very, community driven, in-person matching.
How did you decide which localities, is that the right word? which like geographic areas to start with? Did you have connections with certain colleges that you were tapping into? Can you talk about where you began from a geographic perspective?
Yeah, it was hard to get started. I mean, we had a few college athletes in our network. They weren't even current college athletes, the first couple who signed up. And then we just started working with on social media, building out a little Instagram and sending out a lot of direct messages. And eventually we found some traction with a couple colleges in Florida to start. USF, U Tampa happened to both sort of join all at once, and not the full colleges, but a couple of athletes started with a couple baseball players. And so I was living there at the time, and that was a good place for us to get started and, have continued to grow in those areas. And then, once we sort of built the community on social media, TikTok, Instagram, I added, a founding teammate of mine who's actually a current D1 college lacrosse player who's built up a huge social media following for us. I mean, that really helped get the supply side on board, and we've done really well of building that community of college athletes who want to be involved.
That's really cool. Has your approach on social media been very educational to kind of match the experience on the app? Can you talk about what kind of content has resonated there?
Yeah, it actually hasn't been to date. I mean, I think we're working on tweaking it a little bit. It's been a little bit more personality driven, and letting the college athletes really express themselves. And our social media lead, Yosef, has a very creative and unique approach to relatable type videos. More about living the college athlete life, I would say, than telling you exactly what to do. I mean, he mixes in both, but it's not cut and dry. Here's the 3 things you need to do to get recruited. It's more of like, when you're in the locker room after a game and you lose and everyone's mad, and he's sort of like, we'll go through and like enact that in like a skit. And I think a lot of college athletes have grasp onto that. A lot of middle school athletes, high school athletes are like, oh, I want to be in that locker room someday. And, this guy's like sort of showing me what it's like. This is awesome. Let me follow him on TikTok. So that's the approach we've taken so far. I think it's been pretty successful.
Yeah, that's super fun. I saw an interview you gave where you talked about like one of the biggest challenges in the early days was this cold start problem, right? Like, how do you get that momentum when you don't have users? Can you talk about, the getting over that hump, and what were some of the things that were going through your mind at the time when you've maybe someone first booked a lesson on the platform?
It's just challenging to not have any like proof points of has this worked, has it been successful. I think it was helpful to tap into the brand name of the school, and that's I think what helped us sold it to parents. But at first, it was just hard to get the college athletes on board because it's like, okay, what is this? Is anyone else doing this? Who's following this on Instagram? How many photos have they even posted? But we really just like relied heavily on social media. I would say even more so than any of the tech we've built, and just using that as like the validation, right? So then when we have these baseball players giving lessons, we're taking photos, we're getting reviews from parents, we're sort of using that to like validate and build out the community, and then showing that other people are signed up, other athletes they know might follow us on Instagram. So that sort of helped just like snowball the supply side. And then for parents, yeah, I think the ratings and reviews were super helpful. I mean, they're generally willing to try it if it's a college player, which has helped us. That there's some credibility and excitement that comes working with these college players, but it's helped to build a little bit of a track record of success stories and reviews and ratings.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the parents are the buyer in this instance. There's not the high school kid that's probably coming to your website and booking lessons themselves. Do you kind of market to both though? Like, are you trying to appeal to the athlete themselves, or are you really focusing your demand efforts on the parent? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we do. And it creates challenge, but opportunity, I would say. So the TikTok's been focused on the high school and college athletes, which has helped. It's been a little bit more challenging to get the parents, sort of through the door when the high school players finding it, but it has happened definitely. I mean, we had a lesson booked the other day that was just a high school player found us on TikTok, told his parents. His parents were like, "Yep, let's do it." But then we've also attracted a lot of parents on Facebook, so definitely a different approach. Not as much leveraging Yosef's content style, but more going for the ratings and reviews, showing the athletes, telling the stories, and just getting parents excited through those different tactics. So it's sort of like a two-pronged approach. And luckily, there's different channels on social that tend to have slightly different age demographics and followings, which has been helpful for us to sort of like segment our strategy and audience on those platforms.
Yeah, that's super interesting because in some ways you sort of have two customers. You have the buyer and then the actual user, in the athlete. So it's cool that you have built a strategy to attack both of them. Can you talk a little bit about pricing and how you figured out, maybe, is it the athlete who is pricing the sessions themselves? Are you providing guidance? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we've been pretty hands off in terms of pricing. We do give athletes a little suggestion just to check out the other pricing in their areas, but it's not quite as controlled as um, telling them when they sign up that you should do between 50 and 70. But the average pricing's been just under $70 an hour, which includes our 15% service fee we charge to the parents. So we found that's pretty fair. There's definitely some athletes who do a little bit more, a little bit less, but usually a parent can find like an option in the area for $60 or less, sometimes cheaper. So it's a pretty good value play for the parents. And then we're really working on building out some options for them to get group training more seamlessly with a couple friends, and then you can really drop the price that's attractive, for both sides. You get a couple friends using it for $25 or $30 each, and that's a bigger value to both sides because it's more affordable. It's a group lesson, which has its benefits as well, and then it's a little bit more money for the college athlete.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, honestly, that seems like a really solid price point. Like, it doesn't seem like it would be a big barrier if you think about all the expense parents put into their children's sports. That seems super reasonable. Are you finding that there's a lot of repeat customers? Is that part of your strategy to try to encourage, I don't know if they can buy packages of lessons or just encourage them to have follow-up lessons? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, no, it's a big part of our strategy, and it's definitely a necessity for us. And we've seen that the college athletes and the parents do a good job of using the platform to schedule it, and that there's a big value in just having the option to schedule at like a different time every week. Um, we are working on building out a multiple lesson purchase, and right after that, sort of a lesson pack with discounts. So we're excited about that. I think that'll help us make it a little bit more consistent overall, and have some like most parents be picking a day and time. You know, 3 times this month they're going to train, rather than being a little bit more. Whatever works this week. So it's a fine balance, but we're excited that those features are going to help sort of stabilize it a little bit more.
I saw that it looks like you're working on a lot of partnerships. I don't know if they're integrations, or can you speak to how you view partnerships as a channel to grow Vantage? What are some things you're exploring?
Yeah, so we've worked locally with a lot of different teams and organizations, which have helped us get the word out and helped us reach the parents. And I think that will always be a part of the strategy, to sort of work with the local teams and organizations. And we even layered in this offering where a baseball coach or a softball coach or any sport coach can hire out a Vantage Sports athlete to come train in one of their practices or help like in a team setting, which is good exposure for all these young players to get access to these college athletes in a different setting and not have to necessarily pay it right out of pocket. And then we're working on some slightly larger partnerships with some other players in the sports world that will hopefully help us acquire more and more trainees for these college athletes, at scale.
Are you trying to kind of keep it to a few different sports, or are you open to just kind of anyone who's interested? Have you thought about the variety of coaching that you offer through the platform?
Yeah, so we have actually changed the strategy to be more multi-sport focused. I think at the beginning we're like, okay, we're having success with baseball. Let's just do baseball. But then we found that it was hard to reach like all across multiple states with one sport, and B, there were parents who wanted training in multiple sports, either for the same kid or for two different kids, and like just from a straight economic standpoint, we weren't going to say no to one parent who's training in baseball for their son and then wants to get softball across for their daughter. I mean, it was too good of an opportunity to sort of pass up. So we've adjusted to sort of adding more of the different sports in the same areas.
That's cool. I mean, I imagine that helps with seasonality too, right? Like in the middle of winter in certain states, people aren't thinking about baseball per se. I mean, is seasonality a concern for the business, or do you find that coaching needs generally happen year round regardless?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky with the seasonality. I think just starting out with the college athlete schedule, they're usually home for half the month of December, taking finals for the other couple weeks, so it slows down a little bit there. The winter can be a little tricky with weather, even though we're in some warmer states. But and then just when the college athletes start their seasons, yeah, that's when it's like most of them will take a break from coaching during the middle of their season. So that's when it's nice to pick up some other sports, and then we can sort of keep the wheel turning in the cities and not be so dependent on certain sports and coaches to make it happen.
So you mentioned the very early days back in 2020, you were still working full time while building Vantage on the side. I imagine you're full time now. Can you talk a little bit about the company makeup? How many people do you have helping you build this business? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, we have a pretty lean team. I have a CTO. I have a business development person, and then we have one sort of operations and college athlete, a recruitment person who just joined, and then we have a few great interns who have really helped us build out our offering and sort of helped us scale a little bit. So it's lean, but we have a lot of people on board who are really committed to it, and really excited to keep powering the engine and helping us grow.
How about on the fundraising side? Are you bootstrapped today? Have you thought about raising capital? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we have done a friends and family, or angel round as it's called, which has helped us, really build out the website and get out the door and validate what we're doing. We're working now on our first institutional round, which would be $1 million seed or pre-seed, whichever you want to call it, to really finish building out the product and start taking the offering of the team to the next level, which would be a huge win. It's obviously a challenging environment right now for fundraising, but we've got some good traction. So we're optimistic we'll get that done before the summer and then be in a good place to really continue to grow it out.
That's great. I mean, fundraising right now, every founder I talk to, no matter their stage right now, says the same thing about fundraising. Any like early lessons from either your angel round or your pre-seed round that you think would be valuable for other entrepreneurs to hear? What's your take on fundraising?
Yeah, I would say it's just really, it's largely about the team in place. Selling the concept and the ideas is great, but you're just a tiny fraction of what you need to be if you're going to make these investors' dreams come true. So I would just say just continuing to focus on the team at hand and understand that it's going to be, not quite what you had laid out for in your Excel financial model, but you're going to continue to just like figure it out and keep on going and really sell the team that you have now and then the team that you'll put in place with the funding you're looking to procure.
Have you already thought through what hires you want to add post seed or pre-seed round?
We have, yeah. I think we really need like a head of growth, head of marketing. So that's the big one. And then there might be a couple others as well on the product side.
And I think I read that you had started a business previous to this. Is that correct?
I had, yeah. I started a service-based business, J&J Hardwork, a landscaping company, back in college. So I had seen sort of what types of tactics worked on the marketing side and, how to create a really valuable service and get people coming back. And that business, my business partner still runs that today. So it's done quite well. And he's sort of really grown it over the past, 7 or 8 years. So
I love that. Do you find that a lot of the lessons from your first business translate here, or, did it provide you with more confidence going into starting Vantage that you'd kind of done it before?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely different unit economics. I mean, it's much easier to get lump some serious cash when you're not, using a marketplace model when you're doing all the work yourself. But overall, yeah, definitely some great learnings just in terms of, marketing and customer support and sort of getting off the ground and getting the first couple people going. And then, I think on the operations and scale side too, is putting some of the infrastructure in place to make sure things run smoothly. So that's definitely a few things that have carried over from the first business.
Yeah, I bet. Are there any lessons that you know now that if you could go back to Patrick in 2020 when you were first starting Vantage that you wish you could go back and tell yourself that maybe feel very valuable in hindsight?
Yeah, I would say the couple things are just like building the audience like a little earlier. Really just getting something simple out in terms of the landing page and social media and, really working on building some buzz around what you're doing before you have it even fully figured out would be one thing. And then just definitely some good learnings on the tech side in terms of like, what resources are needed and, sort of the different technology stacks. And, we probably could have done things a little differently to get out the door a little bit lighter, but, we've learned it all along the way in terms of what resources we need and how to really take the tech offering to the next level.
Can you talk about like how are you measuring success today? Like what are some of the key metrics you're looking at? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking pretty heavily at what our bookings, amounts of sessions we're having each week, each month, how that's growing, the ratings we're getting on those bookings, obviously from customers, the repetition from customers, and then the size of the bookings as well. So that's I think what we'll really be able to drive up with some of the new website features I mentioned with multiple lesson packs and, multiple lesson purchases and just making sure we're really, getting enough value, lifetime value from the customers we're acquiring.
Other than just drawing on your own knowledge, from being an entrepreneur previously, like how are you continuing to like grow personally and expand your skill set as an entrepreneur? Can you talk to some of the ways that you go about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's like from different conversations with other other founders and learning from what others have done right and what others have done wrong, and part of the everything marketplace community. So I'm able to connect with a lot of other different marketplace founders and sort of pick their brains on different tactics and the processes you can use to sort of test out different marketing initiatives or product initiatives. And I think just keeping an open mind and being willing to test a lot of different things has helped me, sort of grow both personally and professionally.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of really great communities, like you mentioned, everything marketplaces around marketplaces. So really cool that you're able to tap into that. And I imagine, being in Austin, you've got a lot of startups that you can just kind of collectively learn from in an environment like that as well.
Yeah, no, Austin's definitely been a great community for that.
So what are some of your, like, where do you hope to take Vantage? Like maybe 2 years from now, 5 years from now, what do you hope to look back and see where the company's gone?
Yeah, I mean, I think the vision remains intact to just be a place where all college athletes can go to find customers who want to get private coaching and mentorship from them, and to give youth and high school athletes a great, affordable resource that they can relate to. And, we've done it at a pretty small scale so far, but just sort of taking that and, multiplying it and scaling it out so it reaches a lot more athletes across the country.
Love it. Do you ever see going beyond college? I mean, like, have you thought about, expanding kind of the reach of the coaching?
We have some players who've graduated and either gone into the minors or just started working jobs and are still coaching. So I think that's part of it too. And there might be a larger play there with the minor league organizations, because those are a lot of athletes who are, professional, largely underpaid and in need of some good gig economy type work. So I think that could be a potential next step for us down the line.
Yeah. I mean, since the company was kind of born on the back of the NIL ruling, like, where do you see a further evolution of that ruling, what's kind of your prediction for what's next for college athletes and their ability to monetize their expertise? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's still pretty early in the days of NIL. I think that one of the things that's interesting to watch is what type of community initiatives pop up around these schools. And, a lot of the early activity that's gotten attention has been national brands and CPG companies working with college athletes to promote on social media. But, I'm interested to see what type of schools can get the most creative with really engaging their communities. Whether it be a big Power 5 school or a school that's more maybe nestled into a local small town, and just excited to see what the evolution is in that sense as NIL sort of evolves.
And I don't know if you even consider Vantage a gig economy company. I mean, to me, this is obviously a podcast about the gig economy. And to me, that's what you're doing, right? You're matching up this gig service to people who need it. Any thoughts on where the broader gig economy is going? What's next in the space?
Yeah, no, I mean, I do consider us to be a gig economy service as well. I think it's really interesting that there's so many options specifically for college age students, just even non-college attending adults, from 18 to 25, just have a lot of different options, gig economy type work styles. So I think that I'm interested to see, sort of how it affects people's decisions to go, W-2, go get a college degree, go into work, or sort of use these types of offerings to maybe take a different path and know that there's an option where they can sort of have some flexibility with maybe learning not through, the traditional education system and using sort of gig economy type work to pay the bills, and then learning, different things and skills through less formalized education. So I'm interested to see sort of how that plays out over the next few years.
If people want to learn more about Vantage Sports, where can they go? How can they connect with either you, the company? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is vantagesports.com. Pretty easy. So college athletes can sign up. Parents can check out different coaches available near them. And then you can also email me at patrick@vantagesports.com if you have any questions or want to learn more.
Patrick, this has been awesome. It's been really great to learn more about the company and your background. And I just really appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dana. I've really enjoyed speaking with you and telling you a little bit more about Vantage Sports.
This podcast was brought to you by Every. We work with gig companies, marketplaces, delivery businesses, and more to pay their workers fast. You can learn more at every.com.